So we were talking about OSI layers, right? So just to make your life simpler, I know you all understand OSI layers pretty much. You would have learned a lot about it. But again, a refresher never hurts. So your OSI layers on the image on the left hand side, let's go through that. I think that gives you a pretty much decent idea. The first four slides, or the last four, I think transport, session, presentation, and application is the responsibility of the host, because it means if you're using a browser and if you're trying to access an address or something like that, or stream video, your browser will need to do the job of controlling application, presentation, session, and transport layer, right? And then the network data link layer and the physical layer is the responsibility of the ISP provider or the network itself to take care and make sure that communication goes through to the endpoint. Make sense? Good. So then if you see on the right hand side, that's where we give a high level definition of each layer. Let's come to physical. So physical, we understand if you see a network cable, a CAT cable, we understand what is that. If you see a Wi-Fi router, we understand that. We switch these. If you guys have seen a switch room or a router or something like that, you know what is that, right? A Wi-Fi router or access points in the offices or in your bus terminals or railway stations or airports. You'll see all this physical infrastructure out there, right? That's your physical medium. And you have your data link layer, which is more or less saying that, I will try to make sure that your data is getting through without error, and then it's transmitted on the network. Then the other layer is the network layer. This layer is responsible for moving your packets from source to destination, right? So where it needs to go, who it needs to do. You can actually say that network, data link layer, and physical would be the responsibility of the post office. Like yesterday we did an example of me sending out a letter. So that's where it is. Like, the post office or the post office infrastructure is what responsible for ensuring that it reaches without any problem and doesn't get routed to a different city, which is not the actual address, right? Then we have transport, which is ensure that reliable delivery of messages from process to process, because that's how your two different processes are talking about, right? And then session is all about establishing a session, maintaining a session, closing a session, then making sure that session is still established, and then it's always random, or it's not being disrupted. Then you have presentation there, which is more towards translating the content, compression, and encryption. Right? That's how the message, that's how the layer works with the presentation layer. That's basically supporting the application layer. The application layer provides the actual services to the user. So suppose I am using the Zoom video. Zoom video itself is working on the application layer, right? So there is some layers in applications working in the background. Then the application layer takes control of translating the content which is understandable by both the sender and the receiver and by the operating system itself. Then it also what does it once it does a translation of data from understandable medium to the application layer. For the lower layers to send the data, it also does the encryption. It compresses the data and encrypts it and then passes through. So why do we compress an encryption? So when you compress a file, the size of the file reduces. It's easier for me to send that file across the network, and then when it's getting decrypted or decompressed, you'll receive all the data back, right? It means for me to send across the data in a much efficient manner, I'll try to compress it, and to protect the data, I'll try to encrypt it. Right? Cool. Moving on. So this is some animation which you might see it interesting. It means like, the application, presentation, and session layer does everything. You get the data, it moves to the transport layer adds its header, then the network adds its IP, the data link layer will add its frame, Ethernet frame. Then it goes to the physical medium, the bits and steel. It does the reverse of it. It understands what the Ethernet address, then it understands what the IP address is, then it's destination. Then the transport layer will understand what the TCP tracks are, and then the data gets passed on to the session, presentation, and application. So whatever it happens in one way happens the other way around in the other layer there. Right? Cool. Moving on. So for you guys to understand easily and then remember the OSI layers or the app, these 7 layers easily, would be to say that all people seem to need data processing. A, application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link layer, and processing, or physical. Right? So always remember that your application, even now, probably that's some of the interview questions you'll say that, what's the 6th layer, what's the 1st layer? People get confused in the 7th and the 1st layer. Sometimes people say application is the 1st layer and the data link physical layer is the 7th layer, but it's not. Physical layer is the 1st layer. So you have to go through physical data, network, transport, session, presentation, and application. But if you want to remember all these things, application, all people seem to need data processing, right? Then let's look at something called as protocol data units, which is nothing but how each layer would try to segment or understand the data, or add its layer of information to that particular information which is coming across to that particular layer, or that number of that layer. So OSI layer, each layer adds a header containing protocol information specific to that layer, right? That simply means you will have, so if you look, the header is nothing but you have, say suppose you're sending out an email, or say suppose a video or something like that. So that's your data, that's your thing which you want to send across. So what it does, application layer or the presentation layer would add its own header. Like, okay, this is a presentation layer. So what does the presentation layer does? It helps in compression, it helps in encryption, and it helps in translation. So what type of encoding is being used in presentation layer? What is this type of data which is getting transmitted? It will try to add that part of information to the packet, correct? Then what happens, or to that particular data, like that before the data, so that okay, this data is all about sending video streaming data. So the encoding mechanism or the translation, how do you understand this? It's a video or MP4. Okay, and then the session layer understands, okay, how do I need to set up a session? What is that required for a session? My source and destination, and then what type of session IDs do I require? That's all from the application of the presentation layer, or the session will say that, okay, now my thing for the session layer, so I will add a session indicator saying that this is the session ID for the communication which is going to happen right now. So the session is done. Then when it comes to transport, your transport layer, yeah, so your transport layer, what it does, it adds segments. So segments is nothing but, so let's say, probably I'll explain you more as we reach up to segments, but I'll not talk about it right now, but segments, packets, frames, and bits, I'll explain you in detail in the next coming slides. So you have transport for segments, network for packets, data link for frames, and physical layer for bits. So as you saw in the other slide here, so your stream of bits, whichever you see here, is a stream of bits, right? Physical medium is nothing but sending a stream of bits to the other endpoint.